Hey photographers, today I'll be providing a full tutorial and review on Luminar Neo, Skylum's latest masterpiece. Before we get started, I wanted to thank Skylum for providing me with Luminar Neo to test, but I want you to all know that the opinions I'm about to share are entirely my own. The first portion of this video is the full tutorial and walkthrough of Luminar Neo. If you want to skip straight to my review and thoughts about Luminar Neo, then you can find the timestamps in the description box down below. With that being said, let's dive in. So diving into Luminar Neo, you can see it's broken out into three main panels. We have Catalog, Presets, and Edit. Let's first take a look at the Catalog section, which provides a clear and organized way for you to manage, view, and select your photos before editing. What I love about the Catalog section is that even if you import a lot of photos, you can quickly and easily find and work on your desired photo. So let's first dive into the left-hand side of the Catalog section where you can add and organize your photos. So first at the top, we have the Add Photos, which just allows you to easily import your photos via a folder or just a single image. Then down below, you have the organizational categories. So you have the option to filter to just all photos, the tutorial photos provided by Luminar, single image edits, which is a collection of photos you've opted to edit without adding them to the main library or catalog, the recently added images, recently edited, and the trash images. Beneath the organizational categories, you have the folders and the ability to add in folders of images. So as you can see here, I've added in some images from my computer. And what I love about this section is that it mirrors your computer's file structure. And so when you import photos from particular folders on your computer, their structure will appear here by just doing a little drop down. Beneath the folders, you have the albums. So the albums are virtual collections that you create within Luminar Neo. You can think of them like playlists for your photos. Adding photos to an album doesn't move the actual file, but it just creates a curated list within Luminar Neo. I found this useful for grouping images from different folders based on themes, projects, or any criteria you choose. For example, you can have an album titled like Vacation 2023 or Black and White Portraits, and you can actually grab an image and then just drag it into the album, which is pretty convenient. Turning our attention now to the top of the screen, we have the showing dropdown, and this is a filtering tool that lets you narrow down the photos displayed based on specific criteria, such as viewing all the photos, the raw images, favorites, rejected, unmarked, and edited. To the right of that, we have the sorting dropdown, so you can sort the photos by capture time, edit time, pick, file name, file type, file size, and then ascending or descending. And then within the actual screen space here, you can adjust whether you want to view the images as the thumbnails as medium, small, largest, and so on. Now focusing our attention to the actual images, if you right click on an image, you're presented with some options. So first you can set the flag. So you can either favorite, reject, or unmark an image. This is great for when you're just culling and organizing your photos, just kind of looking at if you have a big batch, just quickly running through them and then marking them as favorite, rejected, or unmarked. And you can also use the hotkeys here. You can rotate the image, flip. You can look at the adjustments, and you can sync, copy, and paste adjustments across images. You can export the image. You can go to either the same date other images or to the folder in your library, and this just helps quickly find related images. You can create an album, and you can move to trash. Also, when you click on an image, what I love is that you can see the metadata on the top right of the screen. So the metadata provides detailed information about the settings you used when the photo was taken, which can be useful for both learning and for understanding the context of your shots. So for example, oftentimes if I took a shot that I really loved, I'll look at the metadata to just see, what exactly my exposure settings were, so I can try to replicate that. So you can see the camera used, the lens used, the white balance, the metering mode, the ISO, the focal length, exposure value, aperture, and the shutter speed used. Underneath the metadata, if you have some of the extensions, which you can get from the extras tab, you can view some of the extensions here. So I currently have Denoise, HDR merge, focus stacking, upscale, and panorama stitching. And if you're curious, Denoise uses AI to analyze the surroundings of an unwanted element to fill in the space convincingly once the element is removed. So essentially, for example, like in this image, you could use it to erase a certain background subject or person in the photo, by just hovering over and then selecting them, and then the tool will erase. And it provides a cool little background animation here that you can even move and play around with your cursor while it's doing its thing. And some of the AI tools do take a little while sometimes with the loading, but it's nothing too crazy. So as you can see, it did a pretty good job, of erasing that guy. He just kind of disappeared from the photo. And so that's Generase. And then you have HDR merge, which is just a typical HDR merge used to combine multiple photos of the same scene, taken at different exposure levels. And then the resulting image you have has enhanced details in the shadows and highlights, effectively extending the dynamic range beyond what a single exposure could capture. And then focus stacking just combines several images taken at different focus distances to give a resulting image with a greater depth of field. It's commonly used in like macro and close-up photography. Upscaling is the process of increasing the resolution of an image using their software algorithms. So this can make an image larger without the usual pixelation or loss of quality that can occur when enlarging photos. And this is particularly great if you need to print larger sizes or for cropping into a photo without losing details. And then panorama stitching allows you to combine multiple images into one wide panoramic image. Very useful if you're a landscape photographer and you like to capture a broad scene that can't be captured in a single frame. So moving on from the catalog panel, we have the presets panel. And the presets panel is fairly straightforward, and it just lists out all the presets you can add to your photos. What I love about the presets is that you can just hover over them and it'll show you what the image will look like. And it's broken down into different sections, such as what presets they think will be great for this photo, some essential presets, some presets that go great with landscapes, Mother Nature, portraits, macro photography, cinematic, lifestyle, and aerial. So I'll just go ahead and select the one of the ones that they think is great for this photo, and then it'll load them. And then as mentioned, you can just hover over it to kind of already see how it will adjust it. Of course, it won't present the final image. You'll click on it, and then once you click on it, then the image will get, again, sharp and in detail. But you can kind of just hover over it just to see how the colors would look, and I find that really helpful. Okay, so moving on now into the edit panel. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of this software. This is where all the magic really happens with all the different tools. So first, starting on this screen, we kind of have three different sections it's broken up into. We have the layers on the left, the tools on the right, and then next to the tools you have the actual edits made. First, we have the layer section where you can add a new image layer. So you can either add an additional image as a layer, which can be used for composites or to overlay textures and other elements. Or you have the add effects layers, so you can add flares, light leaks, stardust, bokeh, and sparklers. And if these effects aren't piquing your interest, then you can also get more assets with the Get More Assets button at the bottom. So just for example, I'll add a random flare into the image. And then as you can see, now it created a new layer. And then you can, adjust and tweak the layers. So now that we added a layer, this leads us into now the tools section. So starting from top to bottom, I'll dive into each of the tools. So starting at the top, we have layer properties. So when you add a layer, now you can adjust the layer properties. You can adjust the opacity of the layer. You can adjust the blend mode. So the blend modes are almost like a secret handshake between the layers. They decide how two layers will interact based on their content. So you can have some of them subtly blend more or make them react to each other more for bigger changes. So you can just always play around with the blend modes. You can rotate the layer and you can flip the layer, and you can image map the layer as well. If you don't like a certain layer, you can just right click on it and remove the layer and it is gone. Underneath layer properties, we have crop. So crop's fairly straightforward, pretty much the same as other photo editing softwares. The only thing different here is that they have composition AI, and composition AI is pretty cool. So if you aren't sure how you want to crop your image to fit a certain compositional technique, then you can just hit the compositional AI button and it will attempt to figure out the best layout for your shot. So I found that it works well and often puts a point of emphasis on the rule of thirds, or frames the image in tighter to put more emphasis on a certain focal point. So it's almost kind of like an instant eye for design that helps your image look its best. So just in this example, you can see it's, let me go back. If you hit the composition AI, it kind of put a focal point on this girl in orange, and it kind of got rid of the these subjects on the right, kind of just tightening in the frame, making the scene a little more simple to see. So now moving on to the rest of the tools. So first we have, in the lineup, we have Enhance AI. So Enhance AI is kind of like your go-to for quick, intelligent fixes. It's perfect for situations where you want to improve the overall look without just spending ages on editing. It's kind of like giving your photo a boost button. So whether you're editing a bunch of photos from a wedding or trying to make that one landscape shot stand out for your Instagram, these AI tools are kind of like your personal editing assistant. So starting with Accent AI, it's like a Swiss Army knife for photo editing. So for example, you have this picture that's almost there, but it's missing kind of like a bit of oomph. So instead of fiddling with a dozen different sliders, you just crank up this one slider, the Accent AI, and it touches up everything from the shadows get lifted and the highlights pop without getting blown out. And the colors come a little more alive as well, as you see when I slide it up all the way to the right. Now, in terms of the Sky Enhancer AI, so let's say you've taken a photo and the sky is a bit bland and like not dramatic enough. Maybe you want those clouds to stand out and maybe add some depth to that blue, or just give the sky kind of that wow factor. Then that's where Sky Enhancer AI comes in. So as I increase it, you'll find that it increases like the texture, the tone, and the whole 9 yards. You know, it's a smart AI tool, so it knows where the sky ends and the rest begins as well. So it won't mess up trees or buildings or anything of that sort. So with both Enhance AI, with both Accent AI and Sky Enhancer AI turned up, you can really see the adjustments that were made. So here is the before and here is the after. And before I dive into the other tools, I did want to mention that each tool also has the ability to, you can set the mask for how it would look. So you could just duplicate this layer, add in a mask. Let me go back to this, add in a mask for it. Like, let me just add a linear gradient to this. And then you would adjust the Accent AI, or I could just show you on the develop tool. Let me just do that. So for example, if I add a mask of a linear gradient, and let's say I want to create almost like a fake ray of sunshine in this top right, I could increase the exposure on that layer, as you can see. And then now I have like a fake sun coming through. So my point is just each tool here has a masking option. If you want to just do a particular point in the image, you can mask it with a brush, linear gradient, radial gradient, or mask AI, which essentially uses the AI tool to mask the elements in the scene by what it finds in the scene. So for example, in this one, it sees human, sky, architecture, water, mountain, natural ground, etc. So diving now into Sky AI. So imagine you're looking at a landscape photo you've taken and the land is stunning, but the sky is just not really doing it justice. So it's flat, lifeless, or maybe even blown out from too much light. That's where Sky AI could come into play. It's kind of like a quick change artist for your photo's atmosphere. So for example, if I select, and as you can see, Luminar also recommends some skies you can test and use in this image. So for example, Sunset Clouds 3. Next up, we have sky orientations. So you can adjust the horizon position. So if you want the sky lower or higher, then it's really no problem. You can easily adjust it. You can also adjust the vertical position and the horizontal position. So now moving into mask refinement. So mask refinement is all about the fine details. It allows you to blend the new sky so well that it'll look like it was always there. So if you have tricky spots like tree branches or intricate structures, then the closed gaps and fixed detail sliders will be your heroes. And this will like patch up any imperfections. So in this example, you can see the sky is actually showing through the buildings. So for example, if I adjust the global slider here and bump it up all the way, it increases that effect even more. So if I drag it down all the way, then you can see it's no longer see-through through the buildings. You can also adjust the closed gaps and the fixed details to, if you pay attention to the roofing of the buildings, you can see that adjusts whether the sky is kind of being shown on the buildings or not. And so you can play around with those so it looks more natural, like it's the sky from the actual scene. Below that, we have scene relighting. So scene relighting is really where the magic happens. So it's not just about swapping skies, it's about making the entire scene like worship the new sky, essentially. So this tool adjusts the lighting of the original scene to match the mood of the new sky. It can even adjust the colors and the relight for humans in your shot, making everything look natural. So if I increase the relight strength, as you can see, it just strengthens the relight of the new lighting. So as you can see, it's blue and orange. So if I increase the strength, it just increases that light, and then you can bump up the saturation as well. And then if there are humans in the scene, it would adjust the lighting on them as well. Next up, we have reflection. So if the sky is on a reflective surface like a lake or a puddle here, then you can adjust these sliders. So this feature will create a reflection of your new sky in the water, making it look pretty realistic. And with the water blur, you can match the sky's reflection to the water's surface, whether it's calm or rippled. So for the reflection amount, I'll go ahead and increase it all the way. And then you can see the sky's stronger in the reflection. And then if I increase the water blur, it'll kind of just blur it out a little more to make it look a little more natural. And then similar to all the edits here, you can just adjust that to make it look how you want it to. And finally, we have the sky adjustments. So the sky adjustments allow you to make sure the new sky fits the original scene's focus and the exposure. So if the original sky had some haze, then you can add that in too. And you can also match some of the grain in the image if it had it, and just other settings that what your original photo had. If you need to adjust the sky to suit it, you can do so here, like making it more warm, the brightness. So for example, or even adding some haze to the image to just better fit the overall original photo. So there's the kind of the before and after. You can see how the photo looked, and now with the new sky, it looks pretty good. Now let's jump down into the essentials section, starting first with the develop tool. So the develop tool is where you can make all the basic adjustments to your photo, essentially creating that base layer for all the rest of your edits. Like you can adjust the light, the blacks and whites, curves, color, sharpness, noise reduction, optics, and you can transform the image. So regarding the light, here it's all about the brightness and mood. Whether you want to make your image sunnier, you can adjust the slide to the right. Whether you want it more moody, you can slide it to the left. And then smart contrast, we have just increases the contrast or decreases the contrast. Highlights adjust the highlights, and shadows adjust the shadows. We also have the ability to edit the blacks and the whites here. You can adjust your tone curve here and make your S-tone curve adjustments or any curve adjustments that you want to make. You can adjust the color and the white balance here. You have your white balance color picker here where you can select a neutral gray. And then adjust the temperature, the tint, the saturation, the vibrance. You can adjust the sharpness in the photo, as well as the radius and the masking of the sharpness. Noise reduction, if you have any noise in your photo due to shooting in low light or high ISO settings, then you can adjust the noise reduction here. Regarding the optics, this gets rid of distortions and aberrations that lenses sometimes can add to your photos. So enabling the auto options allow for a quick fix, or you can use the manual sliders if you like to fine tune it. And then lastly, we just have transform, which is where you can straighten up those wonky lines that buildings and horizons like to do when you shoot from odd angles. So you have vertical and horizontal sliders that you can adjust here. If, let's say, your image was askew, but this one is currently not, so I'm just going to reset it back to original. Next up, we have the erase tool, and the erase tool is like a magic brush for your photos. So for example, let's say you're out capturing like a perfect shot, and just as you're about to like pat yourself on the back, you spot like a pesky little soda can someone left behind. Well, you can easily use the erase tool, and it's like a cleanup crew, and it just removes any unwanted objects with a vanish with just a few clicks. So for example, let's say I wanted to erase this window. You could set the size of your brush, and then you just highlight over the section you want to erase. And then when you're happy with it, you just hit erase, and then it will be erased. You can also restore it if you wanted it back. So just the area that I want restored, I can hit restore and it is restored. You also could easily remove power lines or dust spots if you had them in your image just with these simple buttons. I really like this erase tool. Its erasing capabilities are pretty good. After the erase tool, we have Structure AI. So imagine you have this photo and it's looking a bit like bland and the details aren't popping the way you want them to. Well, that's where Structure AI can come into play. So if you increase it, it turns up the drama in your images. If you slide it to the right, it'll make every detail stand out and it sharpens the edges. And then, so if you slide it to the right, it makes it more structured. And then if you slide it to the left, it creates more of a soft focus look. So this is kind of like the texture and the clarity slider in Lightroom. You can also decide to boost it. So boosting it will take those tiny details in your photo and turn them up to 11 essentially. So whatever you have it on, whether you increase the amount or decrease, then boosting it will just add further detail to whatever you decided to set it to. Moving on to the color adjustments. So the color adjustments are pretty straightforward. You can adjust the saturation, vibrance of your image and remove color cast. You can also adjust the HSL slider, so the hue, saturation, and luminance of every photo. So for example, if I wanted the blues to be more purple, then they could be more purple by me simply adjusting the hue of it. If I wanted the blues to be more muted, then I could adjust the saturation, and the luminance. If I wanted the blues to be brighter, I can adjust the luminance. Basic HSL adjustments and color adjustments in this tool. If I want to convert it to black and white, I can easily do so with one click of a button in the black and white tool. And then I can adjust the luminance of the colors and the saturation in them as well. So the details tool is kind of like adjusting the texture in the image. So if you bump it up all the way, you can see it gets that kind of crumpled paper look, where you can really bump up the texture in your images. So always I recommend, just bumping these up slightly. You definitely don't want to do a lot. Next up we have Denoise. So if you have a lot of noise in your image, you can easily adjust it here. There's currently no noise in this image, so you won't really see a difference, but this is like your basic noise adjustments. So what's really cool, what's new here is the landscape tool. So whether you're a pro landscape photographer or just someone who loves snapping pics of nature while out and about, the landscape tool is like having a little landscape wizard in your pocket. So the dehaze slider will dehaze your image. So for example, let's say you took a photo and it kind of comes out looking like a little bit steamed up, like a window or a rainy day. Then you can easily adjust it with the dehaze slider, so this image doesn't have it. The golden hour slider, so this is kind of like a time machine. Like let's say you missed that perfect light during golden hour and you wanted to add a little bit of that golden hour look to your photo. Then you can adjust the golden hour slider and increase certain effects of if you shot it during golden hour, what it would look like. And then next up we have foliage enhance slider. So you know how sometimes you take a photo of a lush forest or park and somehow it just doesn't pop like it did in real life. So with the foliage enhancer, it does what it says. It enhances the foliage in the image. So essentially just like any of the greens in your image or any of the foliage, it notices that and then you can bump it up. So as you can see, these are really all settings that work perfectly with landscape photos. Next up, we have the vignette. The vignette is pretty self-explanatory. It adds those white corners or black corners to your image to make your photo have a point of emphasis in the middle. Just like other vignette settings, you can adjust the roundness of it, the feather of it, the inner light of it, and you can play around with this to, if you have a portrait photo, this works really well, or just a single subject and point of emphasis where you want to add a vignette. So now moving on to the creative section of the tools, we have Relight AI, and Relight AI essentially allows you to adjust the light in like the foreground or the background of your image, which is pretty cool. So you can adjust the brightness near, brightness far, and the depth. So brightness near will increase or decrease the light in the foreground. And then with brightness far, you can increase or decrease the light kind of in the background. So for example, let's say I really wanted to just put more emphasis on my subject, I could decrease the light in the background and increase the light on her. This way she stands out and pops a little more. You can also adjust the depth of how far you want it to go back. I usually just leave that in the middle. You can also adjust the warmth near, warmth far, etc. Next up we have Atmosphere AI, and Atmosphere AI allows you to control the weather inside your computer. So if you ever look at a landscape and think like, hey, you know what this needs? It needs some fog, or it needs some layered fog. This tool allows you to easily add that. So for example, I could add a fog effect to this image, and as you can see, you can control the amount, the depth, the lightness of it. You can also add mist. You could add haze, and the quality looks pretty good. See, here's the before and after. So this is, if you're shooting like a landscape photo and you want to add some of this, I think that's a great use case. Next up, you can also add sun rays to the image. So you can just place the sun wherever you want the sun center to be. And then if you increase the amount of the sun rays, and then choose, maybe I want it off screen, so I just want the sun rays coming down without actually seeing the center. You can adjust the amount of it. If you do it too much, it starts to look a little too fake. You can adjust the overall look of it, the sun rays length, and the penetration amount. So here's a before and after. Before adding the sun rays, I think it looks pretty good like that. It looks pretty natural. You can adjust the sun setting, so the radius of it, the glow radius, and the glow amount. You can adjust the actual rays, so the number of sun rays. So if you want more, you can increase that. If you want less, you can decrease it. You can also randomize it. And then you can also increase the warmth of the sun and the warmth of the sun rays. So you could adjust it to better match, if the photo is already really warm, you can use it to match the look. And by me increasing it, I think it looks even more natural because the photo was already kind of shot during this golden hour time. And then here's the before and after. As you can see, it looks pretty natural. Next up, we have the dramatic tool. So the dramatic tool kind of gives your photos that like blockbuster movie feel in terms of like super intense movie scenes where the colors are all moody and the shadows are deep and everything just looks, dramatic. It's kind of like adding an edge, a bit of attitude to your photo. So I kind of notice it adds that almost like film noir look. So for example, just if I increase it all the way, you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. It kind of has that like Sin City. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It kind of has that Sin City look to it, where it just, dramatically increases the shadow. The shadows are deep and the colors are moody. So you can just play around with this if you want to make your image a little more moody or more dramatic, I should say. You can play around with the brightness and saturation of it. Or also kind of that 300, the movie. That's kind of what that look, it kind of adds to it. Next up, we have the mood tool. And the mood tool is like a DJ booth for color tunes. So with LUTs being your soundtracks. So LUTs or lookup tables are these super cool presets that can replicate film effects or create entirely new color schemes. So think of them as like Instagram filters on steroids. You'll find a treasure chest of different LUTs you can choose from. So you have cinematic toning, creative, cross-processing, portrait toning. And once again, what I like about it is that if you just hover over it, you can easily see how it'll look. So I'm actually loving kind of the that Bakersfield look, or the Los Angeles too, in Palm Springs. Palm Springs has this kind of like orange, purple look to it. Los Angeles kind of has that blue-green, but if you adjust it here, you can adjust the amount of how strong you want it, the contrast of it, the saturation of it. And you can just play around with the LUTs here. You can also get more LUTs. You can also add custom LUT files. Now onto the toning tool. So the toning tool is where you can fine tune shadows and highlights and the saturation in them. So think of it as like your master volume knob. It controls how strong the color toning in your photo is going to be. If you slide it up, then you're turning up the color volume and giving those tones more voice. If you pull it back, then you're kind of like whispering the hues softly into the image. So for example, if I wanted to add that blue look to the shadows for more of that like cinematic look, and then I wanted to make the highlights orange-y, You could do that here by just switching between the shadows and the highlights and then selecting the amount. And as you can see, it makes it just a little more of that cinematic look. Let me actually just bump up the saturation in the shadows to make it even more so you can kind of see the difference. The matte tool is a cool feature that can take your images back to the days of old film cameras with a single swipe. So you can adjust that matte look into your photo and set the amount that you want and kind of give it more of that like film type look. So you can also adjust the fade of it, the contrast, the vividness, and the color toning. So if I adjust the amount a little bit more, you can see the before and after. It kind of bumps up the shadows, gives it more kind of like that filmic look. So neon and glow allow you to add neon and glow. So starting with the neon part, you can think of it as like digital neon paint. You can get really artsy here. You can just grab the draw tool and start drawing neon lights into it. So for example, like if you had a subject, or if you wanted to add like a lightsaber or something, you can easily add it in here. And then if you don't like it, you can erase it. You can adjust the size and amount of it. I'll just mess around here. So you can increase the amount of the neon, the spread of it, the atmosphere of it. So it's like surrounding luminance, the hue, you can change the hue, and the whiteness. You can also adjust the glow of it. So the inner glow, and then let it load. You can adjust the inner and outer glow. Next we have the mystical tool, and the mystical tool allows you to make your images more mystical looking. So almost kind of straight out of a fairy tale. So it's almost, if you increase the amount, I found it kind of just decreases the contrast, more for kind of that summer haze look I was mentioning earlier. So as you can see, if you increase it all the way, it kind of increases the blur and reduces the contrast and the clarity of the image. So this is great if you have like a landscape photo, or you're trying to go for that light and airy edit look. Next up, we have the glow tool, and the glow tool allows you to increase the glow of the image. So whatever your light source is, it'll increase the glow amount on that light source. And so you can adjust it to soft, you can change it to soft focus, glow, Orton effect, and Orton effect soft. Soft focus kind of gives you that gentle romantic haze, while the Orton effects are kind of like sprinkling fairy dust onto your image, making everything feel a bit more magical and deep, as you can see. And so it's pretty straightforward. You just adjust the amount of the particular glow that you want, and it'll increase it. In the advanced settings, you can fine tune the glow. You can make it more soft, you can make it more bright, less bright, increase the contrast, either increase the warmth or decrease the warmth. Next up, we have the blur tool, and within the blur tool, you have 4 different blur types. You have Gaussian, motion, twisted, and tilt shift. So Gaussian blur is kind of like that one friend who just knows how to smooth over any situation, doesn't really ask any questions. It kind of just softens the rough edges and makes everyone and everything look good. So that's when you'll want to use Gaussian blur. The motion blur is that fast kind of effect where something's moving fast, almost that like flash look of the movie, and that's where you'll want to increase motion blur. You have twisted blur, which is a little more centered. As you can see, it has more like it's pulling into the image. And then you have tilt shift, which will kind of replicate a tilt shift lens. So you can play around with these, and you can also place the blur center. Let's say you had a subject moving really fast, or let's say this kid was moving really fast, and then I set it to the motion blur a lot. As you can see, I can blur this specific aspect of the photo even more. Lastly, we have film grain in the creative section. So film grain is pretty straightforward. It just adds film grain to the image. If you increase it, you can adjust the size and roughness of it. So this is oftentimes just, your creative aesthetic and your own personal style, whether you want more of that kind of filmy aesthetic retro look, then you can choose to add film grain. Next up, we have the portrait section of the tools. And this is personally for me, since I'm mostly a portrait photographer, these are my favorite tools, and I was really surprised and loved using some of these tools, especially the Studio Light one. So the Studio Light allows you to replicate if you were to add in a studio light to your image. So as you can see, if I increase the amount, it adds some light and brightness to her face, like if you had a studio light. But where I really found the power was in this light customization. So you can actually create different patterns and add a texture of the light. So for example, if you wanted to pretend like there was a vintage window, then it would create a window type of light look on her face that wasn't there before. So I liked using this leaf and the windows one as well. It looks really natural, to be honest, like there was a light source there. You can also play around with the position of the light. So if you had a subject and you wanted to get the shadow like just around her eye or something just like this, then you can definitely do so by playing around with the position and whatnot. Next up, we have the Portrait Bokeh tool, and this one's fairly straightforward. You can just increase the look of artificial bokeh added to the image, and which is also known as the background blur. So as you can see, if we take a look at the before and after, particularly paying attention to this window, you can see the before the blur, and then after the blur, we're adding a little bit more of that bokeh look. Of course, you can increase the amount however much you want it, but I always found subtle adjustments are the best. Next, we have the Face AI adjustments, where you can adjust the face, the eyes, and the mouth. So you can easily adjust the amount of light hitting the subject's face by just increasing the face light slider. You can also slim the face. So this is kind of combining Photoshop or other liquefying kind of options into one. So as you can see, when I adjust the sliders all the way, you can see it starts to look a little fake. But if you're one who likes to slim the face of your subject to make them look a little better, then you can easily do so here. You can adjust the eyes of the subject, increasing the iris flare. You can enlarge their eyes. You can whiten their eyes. You can pretty much play around with everything here. And then in terms of their mouth, you can increase the saturation, the redness of their lips, darken that, increase the teeth whitening. So you can easily adjust anything you want regarding the subject's face easily in this tool. Next, we have Skin AI tool, and this tool allows you to easily make adjustments to the skin. So if I increase the amount, you can see it smooths out the subject's skin. Looking at the before and the after, if I increase it all the way, you'll really see how it smoothens out the subject's skin. Be careful not to go too overboard, then you kind of have that like porcelain look. But if you do any skin retouching and you want to smooth out the skin, you can easily do so here. You can also remove the shine on subjects. If you're a beauty photographer and you have like a hot spot on their face, then you can easily just remove the shine here. There's also a skin defects removal AI. If your subject has like a lot of pimples or scars, then the AI software will attempt to remove the blemishes. So as you can see here on her face, she had like a little mark, some marks down here. So just looking at the before and after, the AI removal tool removed that. So next up, we have the Body AI tool. So the Body AI tool, kind of similar to the skin and the face, but now allows you to make adjustments to the subject's body. So you can either increase or minimize the shape of the subject, make them more slim, or make them wider. So of course with this, always anytime you're adjusting anybody's body or face, just remember, everybody's body is beautiful in their own way. Of course, make some subtle adjustments if you're feeling it, just to make the subject look a little better, but you definitely don't want to go overboard and make the subject appear to lose a bunch of weight and like they don't even look like their natural selves. So always just be careful adjusting these settings, always just very minimal changes. You can also adjust the abdomen of the subject, almost like reducing the size of the abdomen or leaving it as it is. Next, we have the High Key tool, and the High Key tool is like the photo equivalent of that fresh, dewy makeup look that you'll see. So High Key tool almost replicates what it'd be like if you have high key lighting in your scene. So you can adjust the standard high key, dynamic high key, and then the blacks as well. So if you're going for kind of that like just stepped into the limelight look, you can increase the amount here. But as you can see, if you do it a lot, it looks pretty bad. Now moving on to the professional tools and the last set of tools in the edit panel. So first we have Supercontrast, and Supercontrast allows you to adjust the tonal contrast. So you can adjust the contrast of the highlights, the midtones, and the shadows. And you can adjust the balance of each as well. So next up we have the color harmony tool, and the color harmony tool allows you to tweak and tune the colors. So let's start first with the brilliance slider. So the brilliance slider is like turning up the vibrance a lot. If you slide it up, the colors get richer as if they're dialed up the intensity. And it's great for making your photos have the kind of that extra punch. Next up we have warmth, pretty straightforward. You slide it towards the right, it increases the warmth. You slide it to the left, it decreases the warmth. So the color contrast just allows you to add an extra punch to your image as well if it's looking a little flat and lifeless. Then we have split color warmth. So split color warmth is like having two temperature dials for your photo, one for the warm tones and one for the cool ones. So you can cool down those blues and greens or make the reds and yellows brighter, or more warm, I should say, giving you the power to control the emotional temperature in your photo. So as you can see, I can make my warm colors more on the orange side or more on the green side, and I can make my colors more on the blue side or more on the purple side. Lastly, we have the color balance. So you can choose to adjust the shadows, the midtones, and the highlights. So for example, in the shadows, I'll attempt to give it more of that cinematic look. So a little more blues in the shadows and some more oranges in the highlights. And then I'll drop the warmth a little bit here. And then now has more of that kind of blue and orange look. So if you like to retouch your photos, the dodge and burn tool is perfect for you. So back in the days, photographers would physically hold back light to dodge and let more light hit the photo to burn. So it's kind of an art, and usually when you need to dodge and burn, you would go to like Photoshop and set up custom brushes and stuff. So you have one where it lightens and one where it darkens, or one where it dodges and one when it burns, I should say. So they make it easy here where you can just select lighten or darken. You can select the amount, and then you have a brush, and you can control the size of the brush as well. So for example, if I wanted to lighten this section, you just hover over it and you just start lighting it. And if you wanted to darken a section, you just hover over it again, and you just darken it. So of course, I just made really bad edits there, but if you actually wanted to dodge and burn your image, you can easily do it here with just the lighten and the darken. Lastly, we have the clone tool, and the clone tool allows you to set a source point and then clone that point and place it somewhere else. So for example, I don't know, let's say, usually this is done for retouching blemishes or certain things like that. So for example, I'll zoom into the image here, I'll set my brush size to be a little bigger, and then I'll sample a portion of her skin right here, and then just cover it over where the blemishes are, and as you can see, it gets rid of them. So you can also set the softness of it, how soft you want it to be, your brush, I should say, and the strength of it as well. And then if you go to the before and after, you can see the blemishes are there, and then after adding the clone tool, you can see they're gone. And of course, you can further refine it and get a closer brush size. I just did it really quick. So those are all the tools under the Tools tab. Lastly, we have the Edit section. So the Edit section, this is just essentially like your photo editing diary in Luminar Neo. And let's say you've just been doing a lot of edits, jumping from tool to tool, adding some contrast here, some saturation there, and you just kind of have like a layered cake of edits now. Well, this Edit section is where you can easily see all the adjustments you made and continue to make further adjustments on that particular edit. So as you can see, I adjusted exposure earlier. So if I decided I wanted to increase it even more, I can come back here. Now just the overall exposure of the image increased, and all the other edits are intact as well still. So it's kind of like a previously worked on section, making it very easy to keep track of all the edits you made. You can also just simply discard edits and then all your edits are gone. And you can also go into each individual edit, remove it and trash it. So after performing a deep dive into Luminar Neo and all its features, I've divided my review into 7 different categories to decide whether or not Luminar Neo is right for you and whether you should consider purchasing it. So first, taking a look at the target audience. So Luminar Neo seems tailor-made for photographers who want powerful results without the steep learning curve of some of those more complex softwares, such as, learning the ins and outs of those Adobe products. Beginners will find solace in its user interface, while professionals can also harness the depth of its tools and AI-driven capabilities such as the specific portrait and landscape tools. I believe the software strikes a harmonious balance, catering to those who want just quick edits and those who wish to deep dive into the different creative processes. In terms of the user interface, I really enjoyed the user interface of Luminar Neo. It's a breath of fresh air compared to other photo editing softwares. Navigating through Luminar Neo is pretty much a breeze. The interface is clean and intuitive, with a modern design that lays out tools and features in an orderly fashion. There's only 3 main panels: the catalog, the presets, and the edit. So it just allows you to kind of categorize and structure everything in your own mind just easier, and you're not really overwhelmed with all the tools and options available that you can kind of get when you dive into like Photoshop or Lightroom per se. In terms of some standout features, as someone who primarily captures portraits, the portrait photography features in Luminar Neo were particularly impressive and were some of the standout features for me. So as someone who loves controlling and finding the right light for my portraits, I loved using the Studio Light tool, which allows you to add in some artificial lighting. As you can see here, just easily add in almost like a tree light, as if there was a tree shadow coming from the right side. I was also pleasantly surprised with the Portrait Bokeh AI tool and how it was able to capture that background blur and simulate what it would look like when you're using a really wide aperture to capture bokeh on your subject and get that shallow depth of field. And then just in terms of the tools in general, the way that they're classified into different sections such as Essentials, Creative, Portrait, and Professional also just makes it very easy to understand what tools should be used for what. And I like how it's structured almost in numerical order of just what to start with first, and you can just work your way top down in terms of edits, and you don't have to jump around to different panels and kind of create your own order in other editing tools. They kind of just lay it out for you, A through Z, this is what you run through. In terms of software performance, while Luminar Neo packs a hefty punch with its features, it does occasionally take a moment to catch its breath. I found this particularly with some of the AI tools, for example, like Denoise or some of the other AI tools. When you're using them, there is a loading screen, but as mentioned in the tutorial, there's a slight pause, and it's just a small price to pay for the level of sophistication it brings to your images, and the wait isn't too bad. In terms of the AI enhancements, so the AI enhancements are like the crown jewels of Luminar Neo, and like we indeed are in the future of photo edits in terms of using AI combined with photo editing. So they offer an unprecedented level of support in image editing, I found, allowing for automatic corrections that would typically require a nuanced hand. The AI tools just allow you to easily just implement edits into your photo just quickly and efficiently. So from exposure to skin imperfections, the AI just consistently impresses me with its ability to elevate a photo with just a simple increase or decrease in a slider. Combining maybe what it would take you to edit in 3 or 4 different tools, you can just do easily with one AI tool. And in terms of extensions, so for those seeking to extend Luminar Neo's capabilities, the array of available and growing extensions is a welcome feature. So these add-ons provide tailored functions and updates, ensuring your software evolves with your photography. So along with extensions, there's also tons of LUTs you can add and tons of overlays, and there's a lot of different options and customization that you can add to your photo. They have an extensions category, a marketplace for all their presets, skies, LUTs, and overlays, And they also have a membership feature where you constantly get new presets and new skies, overlays, and other various assets that you can add to your photos and have. I like this feature because it's always kind of something to look forward to in terms of what you can add next to your photo. In terms of pricing, Luminar Neo presents a pricing model that aligns with its user-friendly ethos. So the options cater to different needs and budgets, offering both a one-time purchase and a subscription model, giving you the freedom to choose how you invest in your editing toolkit. As I'll touch on later, I think having this option for a one-time purchase as well as a subscription is kind of nice. It allows you to break free from that subscription model if you just want to just buy it one time for life. Along with all the extensions, you can easily do so, and then you don't have to worry about those monthly payments, those monthly subscription fees. So now looking at the whole pros and cons for Luminar Neo, I found the pros to be an intuitive UI for easy navigation, AI tools that simplify complex edits, regularly updated extensions, a flexible pricing option, advanced portrait editing capabilities. And the only cons I've noticed were that some features can be slow to load, the initial cost may be a hurdle for some, and some AI edits may also need manual refinement. But overall, I'd say the pros definitely outweigh the cons for Luminar Neo. So now let's look at the comparison for this software to other photo editing software to see whether or not I think it's worth your time to invest or try out Luminar Neo. So I'd say Luminar Neo definitely holds its ground in the competitive landscape of photo editing software. While it may not replace the industry standard Adobe suite for some, its one-click solutions and specific AI-driven tools can make it a preferred choice for those looking to streamline their workflow without compromising on quality. So photographers who need to deliver quality images quickly will find Luminar Neo's AI tools invaluable. For event photographers, such as wedding or corporate photographers, the ability to just rapidly edit your photos with AI assistance means you can provide clients with finished albums faster. So you can just edit your photos with the AI tools and then just copy and paste those adjustments across a whole batch of photos and you're good to go. And for beginners or those intimidated by the complexity of Photoshop or Lightroom, might opt for Luminar Neo. Its interface is straightforward, making it less daunting for those who want to avoid a steep learning curve. Portrait photographers will appreciate the specialized tools like Studio Light, Portrait Bokeh, Skin AI, Face AI, and etc., which automates skin retouching and body adjustments and face adjustments while keeping the results natural looking. Landscape photographers can leverage AI tools that enhance skies or augment scenes with specific landscape tool adjustments. Creatives looking to apply more artistic edits like sunrays or dramatic atmospheres can easily do so. You'll find that Luminar Neo's toolbox is perfect for bringing your vision to life without having to manually create such effects from scratch. And those who balk at Adobe's subscription model might lean towards Luminar Neo's one-time purchase, which can be more budget-friendly in the long run. So the great thing about Luminar Neo is that it can stand its ground being a plugin or a standalone photo editing software. I believe photographers already using other editing tools might also use Luminar Neo as a plugin to benefit from its AI capabilities while continuing their main workflow in another software. So I touched on this a bit earlier already, but photographers who do batch processing, who deal with large volumes of images, Luminar Neo's AI can apply consistent edits across batches of photos, so you can make an edit to one of the photos, and then you can easily sync your edits across multiple other ones. So in terms of hardware limitations, because Luminar Neo is designed to be more lightweight, it's often a go-to for photographers who are working on less powerful computers that may struggle with the demands of more resource-intensive programs. And lastly, photographers who prefer to own their own software outright rather than pay ongoing subscription fees will find Luminar Neo's pricing model attractive. Ultimately, my final conclusion is that Luminar Neo shines for photographers who value a balance between control and automation. It's the tool that steps in when you want to quickly move from a raw image to a polished product without digging into the minutiae unless you choose to. So it doesn't seek to replace the granular control of Photoshop, but instead offers a complementary, more accessible approach to photo editing. If you edit your own photos, I would definitely recommend you try out Luminar Neo. I believe every photographer should try it out for a month to see if you like it, to see if it speeds up your workflow while checking out the plethora of useful features they have for you. And if you're interested in trying it out, I have an affiliate link in the description box down below and you'll get 10% off it. So be sure to check that out as it will go towards supporting the channel. Thanks for watching.